The hood came off, rain hit her face, and 5 men stood in a circle deciding who would die first. Then a single sniper dropped from a container, dead, and every head turned toward the figure stepping through the storm like a verdict. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to our story. The fluorescent lights of East Side Market hummed a dead tune. The air tasted like artificial pine and shame, the kind that clung to skin, suffocating and thick. In aisle 4, a woman knelt on cold linoleum, trembling, her mustard-yellow cardigan so worn the fabric had surrendered in places. Her daughter's hand was locked in hers, tiny fingers white from the pressure. Zara's lips moved silently, counting crumpled bills for the 4th time. $5.87. Her chest heaved. The frozen turkey behind the glass door mocked her, $24.99. It might as well have been 1,000. "Mama, please," 6-year-old Luli whispered, her stomach growling loud enough for strangers to hear. The sound ripped through Zara like broken glass. Silent tears carved paths down her cheeks, hot and humiliating, the kind that solved nothing. 3 feet away stood a man carved from nightmares. Young Cheol Huang wore a navy coat worth more than Zara's rent, silk scarf, leather shoes polished to mirrors. But it wasn't the money that made people step back. It was his face, stone cold, sharp enough to draw blood, eyes darker than the spaces between stars. He didn't look successful. He looked dangerous. Before we continue, drop your time zone below and tell us, would you accept help from someone who looked like a threat? Don't skip what happens next, because this stranger's identity will shatter everything. His 7-year-old son tugged his hand urgently. "Appa," Jun whispered in Korean, voice breaking with compassion his father had forgotten existed. "Help them!" Young Cheol's jaw tightened. He'd built an empire in shadows, commanded men through fear, solved problems with violence. For a decade he'd perfected not feeling, not seeing people like this woman and her starving child. But Jun was watching, believing his father could be a hero. The cashier stared. An elderly couple slowed, judgment thick as fog. Zara's shoulders shook harder. Her humiliation complete, public, crushing. Young Cheol stepped forward. The movement was predatory, controlled, lethal. Zara's body recognized danger before her mind could. Her arm shot out to shield Luli, survival instinct screaming. The cashier gasped. Even Jun went still, uncertain. Young Cheol's hand disappeared inside his coat, not toward his wallet, but with the practiced motion of a man reaching for something else, something that ended conversations permanently. The entire aisle held its breath. When his hand emerged, it held a sleek black card. Mate finish. No logo. The kind that didn't have limits because the men who carried them didn't need them. "Feed the child," he growled, voice low enough to rattle bones. He placed the card on the counter with a sharp crack. "Everything in her cart. And the turkey. The biggest one." The cashier's hands shook scanning items. $127.43. Zara stared up at him, gratitude and terror wrestling on her tear-streaked face. This wasn't a hero. This was the man mothers warned about. As young Cheol turned to leave, his eyes caught something. Zara's cardigan sleeve had ridden up, exposing her forearm. There, vivid against her brown skin, was a bruise, purple-black, shaped like 4 fingers pressed too hard. A signature young Cheol recognized instantly. His expression never changed. But he pulled out his phone, typed 3 words, and sent them into the darkness of his world. Find who touched her. He walked away, son's hand safe in his, leaving Zara trembling on the floor with one question burning like acid. What kind of monster just saved us? And what does he want in return? The rain came down in cold sheets, turning the narrow streets into rivers of filth. Zara clutched the grocery bags tighter, plastic handles cutting into her bruised forearm as she navigated the cracked sidewalks of riverside slums. The air reeked of wet asphalt, rotting garbage, and desperation, the smell of a neighborhood the city had forgotten. Distant sirens wailed like ghosts, echoing off crumbling brick buildings tagged with graffiti promises no one believed anymore. Luli pressed close to her mother's side, shivering in her thin jacket, silent because she'd learned years ago that complaining changed nothing. The turkey in the bag felt impossibly heavy, a weight of grace Zara didn't understand and couldn't afford to question. Who was that man? The question circled her mind like a vulture. His eyes had been empty of warmth, but his hands had saved them. Men like that didn't exist, not in her world. 2 blocks behind, a black Mercedes idled in the shadows between streetlights, engine purring soft as a predator's breath. Inside, young Cheol watched through rain-streaked glass. Jean slept in the back seat, head tilted against the window. Innocent and untouchable. The boy had no idea his father was a monster. Young Cheol intended to keep it that way. His driver, Min Jun, loyal for 15 years, silent as a tomb, sat perfectly still. Boss? Wait, young Cheol murmured, eyes tracking Zara's slow progress through the downpour. She moved like someone who'd been beaten by life too many times to expect mercy. It reminded him of his wife in the final months, the way Sarah had carried herself with dignity even as cancer hollowed her out. The memory was a knife he couldn't pull free. Zara reached her building, a 4-story hellhole with boarded windows and a door that hung crooked on broken hinges. She fumbled for her keys. Then young Cheol saw them. 2 men stepped from the shadows. Big, leather jackets slick with rain. One had a scar running from eyebrow to jaw. The other's knuckles were tattooed with crude symbols young Cheol recognized instantly, street trash pretending to be soldiers. The scarred one grabbed Zara's arm, the bruised one, and she cried out. The groceries hit the ground. The turkey rolled into a puddle. "Where's our money, Zara?" Scarface hissed, shaking her hard enough that her head snapped back. "Mr. Kang is done waiting." "I told you. 2 more weeks, I swear." The second thug grabbed Luli by her jacket, lifting her off the ground. The little girl screamed, kicking, terrified. Young Cheol's hand moved to the gun holstered beneath his coat. His pulse didn't change. Killing these men would take 11 seconds, 12 if he made it hurt. But Jean was sleeping 3 feet away. The moral calculus was instant and excruciating. Be the monster, protect the stranger. Teach my son that power is for crushing threats, or be the father. Show restraint. Let the boy sleep through the violence. He chose neither. He chose both. "Min Jun," young Cheol whispered, pulling out his phone. He snapped 2 photos, the thugs' faces lit perfectly by the streetlight. He memorized the tattoos, the scar, the way Scarface's left eye twitched. Every detail catalogued for later. "Bring them to the warehouse tonight. Both of them." "Yes, boss." Do not wake my son. Young Chul texted his second-in-command, Dae-jung, 4 words. Send someone. Riverside Apartments. Now. 60 seconds later, a black SUV rolled up behind them. 2 of young Chul's men, quiet, efficient, invisible, emerged and moved toward the altercation. They didn't draw weapons. They didn't need to. Their presence alone made the thugs freeze. Scarface dropped Zara. The second thug released Luli. Both men looked around, confusion turning to fear as they recognized the tattoos on the SUV men's wrists. The dragon coiled around a sword. The mark of the Huang Syndicate. Walk away, one of young Chul's men said quietly. Now. The thugs ran. Zara collapsed against the wall, pulling Luli into her arms, trembling violently. The SUV men picked up her groceries, placed them by her door, and disappeared without a word. In the Mercedes, young Chul watched Zara stumble inside, safe for tonight. Jeanne stirred, but didn't wake. The warehouse, young Chul said softly. His voice was ice over molten rage. I want to know everything. Who they work for. Who authorized them to touch her. And Minjun? Yes, boss? Make sure they're conscious when I arrive. The warehouse smelled like rust, old blood, and fear, a scent young Chul knew better than his own cologne. High-voltage lights hummed overhead, casting harsh white glare across concrete stained with memories best forgotten. The air tasted metallic, copper, and salt, the way it always did when men realized they were about to die. Scarface and his partner hung from chains bolted to the ceiling, wrists bound above their heads, toes barely scraping the floor. Blood dripped from Scarface's nose where Minjun had convinced him to talk. The other man had already pissed himself. Young Chul stood 10 feet away. Hands in his pockets, face carved from stone. He looked bored. That was worse than anger. Men who looked bored while inflicting pain were capable of anything. Tell me again, young Chul said quietly, who you work for. Scarface spat blood. I told you, Mr. Kang runs collections for... For? The man's eyes darted left. Hesitation. Fear. Minjun stepped forward with a crowbar. Scarface flinched. Wait! Kang reports to the Eastern Faction. We've been running loans and collections in Riverside for 6 months. Young Chul's jaw tightened. The Eastern Faction answered to him. Or they were supposed to. Who authorized you to operate in my territory? Silence. Young Chul nodded at Minjun. The crowbar came down on Scarface's left kneecap with a sickening crack. The scream echoed off metal walls, primal and useless. Who authorized? You. No one, Scarface sobbed, gasping. Kang said it was low level, beneath your radar. He said if we kept it quiet, no one would care about a few poor families. The words stopped, because young Chul had gone perfectly still. His own organization. His men. Extorting locals. Bleeding people like Zara dry. Taking food from children's mouths, while young Chul sat in his mansion counting money he'd never spend. The guilt hit like a freight train. Sharp. Visceral. Nauseating. He thought of Luli's terrified scream, Zara's bruised arm, the crumpled $5 bills on the grocery store floor. I caused this. Not directly, but he'd built the machine that chewed up people like Zara and spat out their bones. Sarah would have been ashamed of him. Her debt, young Chul said, voice flat. How much? 15 grand, the second thug whispered. Clear it. Min-jun blinked. Boss? Clear every debt Kang's collected in Riverside. All of them. Refund what they've already paid. Young-chul pulled out his phone, tapped a message to his accountant. Charge it to my personal account. Boss, that's not a suggestion. Young-chul's eyes were black ice. He turned to the thugs. You will never speak of this. You will never return to Riverside. You will tell Kang his operation is shut down. And if I hear his name again, I will personally remove his lungs through his ribcage. Are we clear? Both men nodded frantically. Cut them down, Young-chul said. Break their hands. Let them live. He walked out into the pre-dawn darkness, leaving the screaming behind. At 6:47 a.m., Zara stumbled to her door in her bathrobe, exhausted from a night of Luli's nightmares. An envelope lay on the cracked linoleum. No postage. No return address. Her hands shook as she opened it. No cash inside. Just 2 items. A letter on cream-colored paper with 2 words printed in elegant script. Paid in full. And beneath it, an embossed business card. Huang Empire Hotel. Interior design position. Interview today. 10:00 a.m. Please attend. Zara's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, staring at the impossible grace in her hands, and for the first time in years, she let herself hope. She had no idea the monster who'd saved her was already pulling every string in her life. The Huang Empire Hotel rose from downtown Seoul like a glass cathedral, 42 stories of wealth, power, and exclusivity Zara had only seen in movies. The revolving doors whispered open, releasing a wave of climate-controlled air perfumed with expensive lilies, and something else she couldn't name. Money, maybe. The scent of people who'd never counted pennies on a grocery store floor. Her shoes, second-hand, polished until the leather nearly cracked, clicked against marble floors veined with gold. Soft jazz piano drifted from hidden speakers, the kind of music that made you feel like you'd stepped into another world. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen starlight. Zara's reflection stared back from every polished surface, her mended cardigan and nervous hands glaring proof she didn't belong. Turn around. This is a mistake. But Luli needed her to be brave. So Zara walked to the reception desk, chin up, pretending she deserved to breathe this air. I'm here for an interview? Design department? The receptionist, flawless makeup, hair like silk, smiled warmly. Ms. Davis? Top floor. They're expecting you. The elevator ride felt like ascending into heaven. Or judgment. Zara's palms sweated. Her resume was 3 years outdated, her portfolio a battered folder of sketches she'd done between night shifts. She'd studied design in college before Luli's father left, before poverty made dreams a luxury she couldn't afford. Why am I here? Who sent that card? The elevator doors opened directly into an executive suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The interviewer, a sharp-suited woman in her 50s, stood waiting, her smile tight and professional. Ms. Davis, I'm Director Choi. Please, sit. But Director Choi wasn't looking at Zara. Her eyes kept darting to a door on the left, cracked open just an inch. Zara caught a shadow moving behind it. Someone listening. The interview lasted 12 minutes. Director Choi asked 3 softball questions, barely glanced at Zara's portfolio, and spoke in a rush like she was reading from a script someone had forced her to memorize. Your experience is adequate. Your aesthetic aligns with our vision. The position is yours, if you want it. Zara blinked. I'm sorry. What? 60,000 annually. Full benefits. You start Monday. Director Choi's hands trembled slightly as she slid a contract across the desk. Sign here. I don't understand. You haven't even… Sign! The word came out sharp, almost desperate. Director Choi's eyes flicked to the cracked door again, and Zara saw it clearly now. Fear. This woman was terrified. Zara's stomach twisted. Who's behind that door? But she thought of Luli's empty belly, their eviction notice, the impossibility of $60,000 a year. Her hand shook as she signed her name. Welcome to Huang Empire, Director Choi whispered, relief flooding her face. You can leave through the lobby. Zara stepped off the elevator in a daze, contract clutched in her hands, her mind spinning. This isn't real. This doesn't happen to people like me. She walked through the marble lobby toward the revolving doors, her reflection a ghost in the polished walls. Then she collided with someone. Hard, solid, expensive cologne and the scent of danger. She looked up, and her blood turned to ice. Young Cheol Huang stood 3 inches away, navy suit perfect, dark eyes locked on hers with the intensity of a predator recognizing prey. You, Zara breathed, stumbling backward. You're the man from the store. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Calculation. Something she couldn't name. Ms. Davis, he said softly, voice like gravel and silk. Welcome to my hotel. His hotel, his interview, his job offer. The world tilted. Zara's mind raced through the impossible connections, the grocery store, the thugs disappearing, the debt vanishing, the job materializing from nowhere. What do you want from me? She whispered, her voice shaking. Young Cheol tilted his head slightly, studying her like a puzzle he'd already solved. I want you to succeed, Ms. Davis. Nothing more. Liar. Everything about him screamed danger, control, manipulation. But before she could respond, he stepped around her and walked away, leaving her trembling in the lobby, clutching a contract that felt less like opportunity and more like a chain she'd willingly locked around her own neck. The playground at Kingswood Academy smelled like fresh-cut grass and privilege, the kind of manicured green that required armies of gardeners and budgets bigger than most families' yearly income. Children in crisp uniforms laughed and chased each other across equipment so new it still gleamed. The air tasted like safety, the kind money bought and poverty couldn't touch. Luli stood frozen at the gate, her second-hand uniform a size too big, her backpack held tight against her chest like armor. She'd never been to a school that didn't have bars on the windows. You're the new girl? A boy with round glasses and messy black hair appeared beside her, smiling. I'm Jean. Want to see the library? It has a dragon statue. Something about his kindness, effortless, unguarded, made Luli's shoulders drop. Okay. They became inseparable by lunch. Jun and Luli sat under a cherry blossom tree, sharing snacks, trading stories that mattered only to children who understood loneliness. Jun told her about his mother, how she'd died when he was 4, how his father worked all the time and never smiled. Luli told him about her father, who'd left before she could remember his face, how her mother cried sometimes when she thought Luli was sleeping. Do you think they're sad because of us? Luli asked quietly. No, Yun said firmly. They're sad because they love people who aren't here anymore. That's different. The wisdom of 7-year-olds, unfiltered and achingly true. Around them, children laughed. But Jean and Luli sat in comfortable silence, two kids who understood the weight of missing someone. 3 weeks later, the school required a parent conference. Mandatory. Both families. Zara arrived early, nervous in her new work clothes, professional but modest, bought with her first paycheck from Huang Empire. She waited in the sunlit corridor, watching other parents chat easily, their wealth casual and unconscious. Then he appeared. Young Cheol Huang walked down the hallway like he owned the building, which, Zara had learned, he technically did through a donor foundation. He wore charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, his presence sucking oxygen from the air. Their eyes met. Zara's pulse spiked. She'd avoided him for 3 weeks, arriving early to work, leaving through side exits, terrified of confronting the man who'd rearranged her entire life without asking permission. "Ms. Davis," young Cheol said, stopping in front of her. His voice was neutral, but his eyes held questions. "Mr. Huang," she forced the words out. "I didn't know Yun was your son. And I didn't know Luli was your daughter." A lie. He'd known everything. But his tone suggested they'd pretend otherwise. The teacher called them in together. The conference was surreal, 2 single parents, worlds apart, listening to Ms. Park gush about how Jun and Luli had become best friends, how they looked out for each other, how their kindness was changing the classroom culture. "They've requested a playdate," Ms. Park said brightly. "I think it would be wonderful for both of them." Zara's stomach dropped. "I don't think we'd be happy to host," young Cheol interrupted smoothly. "This Saturday, my home, 2 p.m. She wanted to scream no, but Luli was standing in the doorway with Jean, both children's faces lit with hope, and Zara couldn't destroy that. "Fine," she whispered. Saturday arrived too fast. Young Cheol's home wasn't a home. It was a fortress disguised as a mansion. High walls, security cameras, men in dark suits stationed at intervals that suggested military precision rather than wealth. But inside, something shifted. Jun and Luli disappeared into a playroom filled with more toys than any 2 children needed. And Zara found herself in a sunlit kitchen with young Cheol, watching him make tea with hands that looked like they'd never done anything domestic. "You're staring," he said without looking up. "You terrify me," Zara replied honestly. "I know." He set a cup in front of her. "I'm sorry for that." "Are you?" He met her eyes then, and the mask cracked. Just for a second. She saw grief there, exhaustion, the weight of being something he hated. "I saw my wife in you," young Cheol said quietly. "In that grocery store. She used to do that. Count coins, sacrifice everything for our son. I watched cancer take her slowly and I couldn't save her. But I could save you." The honesty was a weapon that disarmed her completely. "I'm not your second chance," Zara whispered. "I know." Through the window, they watched Jun teach Luli how to fly a kite, both children laughing in the fading sunlight. For a moment, the world felt almost normal. Then young Cheol's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His entire body went rigid. The text was one sentence. "We know you're playing house, boss. Cute kids. Would be a shame if something happened." Attached was a photo. Jun and Luli at school, taken through a fence. Young Cheol's hand closed around the phone so hard the screen cracked. When he looked up, the father was gone. The monster had returned. "You need to leave," he said, voice ice. "Now." The crystal chandelier above the hotel ballroom refracted light into 1,000 dancing stars. Zara moved through the crowd in her borrowed black dress, carrying a tray of champagne flutes that clinked softly with every step we're on. The charity gala was Huang Empire's biggest event of the year, and Director Choi had insisted all design staff work the floor. The air smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. A string quartet played Vivaldi, barely audible beneath the hum of deal-making. Waiters glided between clusters of Seoul's elite, politicians, CEOs, people whose pocket change could feed Riverside for months. And in the center of it all stood Yong Chil Huang. He wore a black tuxedo like a weapon, surrounded by men who laughed too loud at his jokes, but his face remained stone. Untouchable. The dragon of Seoul, holding court. Zara kept her distance, her mind replaying Saturday's terror, the photo, the threat, the way Yong Chil had shoved them out without explanation. Luli cried every night, asking why Jean wouldn't play anymore. Then she heard it. A voice, low and sharp, cutting through cocktail chatter. She'd been refilling glasses near a marble column when two men stepped behind it, their conversation shielded from the crowd, but not from her. Getting sloppy. Huang, playing father to street trash. Careful. The dragon doesn't tolerate disrespect. He doesn't tolerate weakness either. And this woman, Davis, she's making him soft. First the debt forgiveness, then the job, now the kids are friends? He's compromised. Zara's blood turned to ice. The tray trembled in her hands. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we remind him what happens when personal feelings interfere with business. The girl would send an effective message. Which girl? A pause. Then, both. The champagne flutes shattered against marble. The two men stepped around the column, their eyes widening as they recognized her. One smiled. You must be Ms. Davis. She ran, not toward the exit, toward Yong Cheol, survival overriding pride. She shoved through the crowd, champagne soaking her dress, ignoring scandalized gasps. Mr. Huang! He turned, irritation flashing, but it died the moment he saw her face. They're going to hurt Luli, she gasped. They said both girls. Young Chill's hand closed around her wrist, pulling her toward a side hallway. His security materialized, forming a wall between them and the ballroom. Who? His voice was death. Two men. Behind the column. They talked about you being compromised, teaching you a lesson. Describe them. She did. Every detail. Gray suit, scar on his left hand, silver at his temples. Young Cheol pulled out his phone, showed her photos. These men? She nodded. His jaw tightened. Park Sang-woo, Eastern Faction. The man whose operation I shut down 3 weeks ago. He met her eyes. The debt collectors who hurt you worked for him. The world tilted. Dots connected in her mind. Dots she'd deliberately avoided seeing. The grocery store. The thugs disappearing. His hotel. His money. His world swallowing hers whole. You're not just a businessman, she whispered. No. You're mafia. Young Chell didn't deny it. I'm the man keeping you alive. Right now, that's all that matters. No. Fury cut through fear. You manipulated everything. The job, the school, the debt. You didn't save me. You bought me like I was a project to fix your guilt. I gave you a chance. You gave me a cage. Tears blurred her vision. I'm not your second chance, young Chul. I'm not your dead wife. I'm a person who wanted to survive on my own terms, and you took that from me. The accusation hit him like a physical blow. For the first time, Young Chul Huang looked genuinely wounded. I'm sorry, he said quietly. But you were drowning in a system I created. You should have asked what I needed instead of deciding for me. But men like you don't ask. You take, you control, you destroy. She ripped her wrist from his grasp. I'm not your charity case, Zara whispered, backing away. And I won't let my daughter grow up thinking she owes her life to a monster. She turned and walked into the crowd. Young Chil stood frozen, surrounded by security, watching her disappear. Minjun appeared at his shoulder. Boss, the targets are heading for the exit. Orders? Young Chil's eyes went black. Follow them. I want to know where they sleep, who they love. And Minjun? Prepare the warehouse. Zara grabbed Luli from Director Choi's apartment and ran into the night. She had $347 in savings, a daughter to protect, and nowhere safe to go. But she'd rather die free than live as the dragon's charity project. Behind her, predators began circling the woman who'd dared to run from the most dangerous man in Seoul. The cold wind sliced through the broken windowsill like a blade, carrying the stench of mildew and rotting garbage from the alley below. Zara wrapped a threadbare blanket around Luli's shoulders, her hands trembling. Not from cold, but from the weight of her choice. They'd been back in Riverside for 3 days. 3 days of stale bread and canned soup. 3 days of Luli asking when they could go back to the nice place. 3 days of freedom that tasted like ash. Mama, I'm hungry, Luli whispered, curled on the sagging mattress they shared. Her voice was small, accepting, the voice of a child who'd learned not to expect miracles. I know, baby. Tomorrow I'll find work. Real work. Not mafia money. Not blood money. Not charity wrapped in expensive lies. The hotel had called 17 times. Director Choi. HR. Even the CEO's office. Zara ignored them all. She'd rather starve than owe her life to a man who played God with people's futures. But God, it was hard. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're being stubborn. Let me help. Young Cheol. She deleted it without responding. 10 miles away, Young Cheol stood in the center of his mansion. 42 rooms of marble and emptiness, staring at his phone. Jun had cried himself to sleep again, asking why Luli wouldn't come over. Why Appa looked so angry all the time. Boss, Minjun's voice was careful. The surveillance team reports Ms. Davis hasn't eaten in 2 days. The child had soup from a can tonight. That's all. Young Chil's jaw tightened. He could end this. One phone call. His men could bring Zara and Luli here, keep them safe whether she wanted it or not. Lock them in luxury until Park's faction was eliminated. It would be easy. Efficient. But it would prove her right. That he was a monster who took and controlled and destroyed. Pull the surveillance, Young Cheol said quietly. Minjun blinked. Boss? Pull it. If she wants to drown, I won't force her to swim. The words tasted like poison, like watching Sarah die all over again. Helpless, useless, failing the people he loved. And if Park's men find her first? Young Cheol's eyes went black. Then I'll burn his entire bloodline to ash. At 2:47 a.m., Zara woke to the sound of splintering wood. Her door exploded inward, torn from its hinges by a boot that hit like a battering ram. 3 men poured into the one-room apartment, not the debt collectors from before. These were professionals. Tactical gear. Guns with silencers. Eyes empty of mercy. Luli screamed. Zara threw herself over her daughter, her body a useless shield against the inevitable. The lead man smiled, pulling out a phone to film. "Say hello to the dragon," he said, pressing the barrel of his gun against Zara's temple. "Let's see if he still cares about his charity project." The last thing Zara saw before the hood came down was Luli's terrified face, and the last thought she had was a prayer. Please, someone, anyone. Young Chul. Rain hammered the shipping yard like bullets, turning the industrial wasteland into a hellscape of rusted metal and shadows. Water streamed off stacked containers, creating rivers between the steel mountains. The air tasted like salt and oil and terror. Zara's wrists burned where the zip ties cut into her skin. She knelt on cold concrete in a pool of rainwater. Luli pressed against her chest, both of them shaking violently. The hood had come off 20 minutes ago, revealing their location. Nowhere. An abandoned port on the city's edge where screams dissolved into wind. 5 men surrounded them. Park Sang-woo stood at the center, older, gray-haired, smiling like a grandfather about to tell a bedtime story. "He'll come," Park said, checking his watch. "The dragon always comes for his treasures. And when he does, my men will put a bullet in his skull, and Seoul will be mine." "He won't come?" Zara whispered, voice hoarse. "I'm nothing to him." Park laughed. "You ran from him, and he pulled surveillance out of respect. That's not nothing. That's weakness. And weakness is opportunity." Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning illuminated the yard for half a second, long enough for Zara to see the 10th man, perched on a container with a sniper rifle aimed at the entrance. Then the lights went out. All of them. Every industrial lamp, every security light. The shipping yard plunged into perfect darkness. Park's smile died. What? A single gunshot. The sniper fell from his perch, hitting the ground with a wet thud. Then he appeared. Young Cheol Huang walked through the rain like death itself. No suit, no polish, black tactical gear, Kevlar vest, face streaked with camouflage paint. He held 2 guns, and his eyes reflected nothing human. "You touched what's mine," young Cheol said softly. Park raised his weapon. "You're outnumbered." Young Cheol moved. What happened next shattered every illusion Zara had about the man who'd bought her groceries. He was a weapon. Efficient. Brutal. Terrifying. The first man died with a knife through his throat before he could scream. The second took a bullet between the eyes. The third tried to run. Young Cheol shot out his kneecap, then executed him with cold precision. It was beautiful and horrifying. A dance choreographed in violence. Park fired wildly. Young Cheol dodged, twisted, moved like smoke. He disarmed Park with a strike that shattered the man's wrist, then pressed his gun against Park's forehead. "You threatened my son," Young Cheol whispered. "You threatened her." He pulled the trigger. Zara screamed, not in fear of young Cheol, but because one of Park's dying men had fired a final shot. The bullet meant for Zara's head hit young Cheol's shoulder instead. He'd thrown himself in front of her without hesitation, taking the round that would have ended her. He collapsed into the rain-soaked concrete, blood spreading dark and fast. "No," Zara breathed, hands reaching for him. "No, no, no!" His eyes found hers. "Run," he gasped. But she didn't run. She couldn't. The monster had saved her. Again. The ICU smelled like antiseptic and death. Sterile white walls, machines beeping their mechanical symphony of survival. Zara sat beside young Cheol's bed, her hand wrapped around his, Luli asleep in the corner chair. 48 hours since the shipping yard. 48 hours of surgery, blood transfusions, and doctors whispering about millimeters and miracles. He'd flatlined twice. Both times, Zara had screamed at him to stay, her voice raw with a desperation she didn't understand. Now his eyes opened. Slowly, painfully. Zara. Her name was gravel and exhaustion. "You're an idiot," she whispered, tears streaming. "You could have died." "Better me than you." He tried to smile. Failed. The morphine made his words slow. "I'm sorry. For everything. The job, the school, the control. I saw my wife in you. Her strength, her pride, and I just wanted to save you. I wanted one good thing in a life built on blood." His confession broke something inside her. "You terrify me," Zara said. "Your world, your violence, everything you are, it's wrong. But you threw yourself in front of a bullet for me, for Luli. You didn't hesitate." "I'd do it again." His grip tightened weakly on her hand. "Every time." "I know." She leaned closer, her forehead nearly touching his. "No more secrets. No more shadows. If we do this, if I let you into our lives, you tell me everything. You ask before you decide. You let me choose." "We?" Hope flickered in his dark eyes. "We." The word felt like jumping off a cliff. "Luli loves John, and She stopped, swallowing hard. "I think I might be falling for a monster who's trying very hard to be a man." Young Chill's laugh turned into a cough. Pain rippled across his face. "I'll fail. I'll make mistakes. I don't know how to be soft." "Then we'll learn together." Zara took his hand in both of hers. "But you're out. No more mafia. No more violence. You find a way to leave that world, or this ends before it begins." "For you?" He studied her face. "I'd burn it all down. For your son, for Jean. He deserves a father who comes home at night." The truth hit young Chill like the bullet had. Sharp, undeniable. Jun's face filled his mind. His boy, who believed Appa was a hero, who shouldn't have to inherit a kingdom built on corpses. "Okay," young Chill whispered. "I'm out." Sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flickered through the window. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy boots, official voices. Min Jun burst through the door. "Boss, the police are here. They want to question you about the shipping yard. And the prosecutors, they're building a case." Young Chol met Zara's eyes. "I have to make a deal. Immunity for testimony. It's the only way to protect Jun from my past." "Then we do it together," Zara said firmly. The door opened. Detectives entered. And young Chiol Huang chose his son's future over his empire. The smell of roasted chicken and kimchi filled the modest two-story house in a neighborhood where children played without fear and neighbors knew each other's names. Warm November sunlight streamed through windows adorned with hand-drawn turkeys. Luli's artwork proudly displayed on the refrigerator. 1 year. 1 impossible year since the shipping yard. Zara stood at the stove, basting the chicken that had started everything, her designer clothes replaced by comfortable jeans and an apron that read "World's Okayest Chef," a gift from young Chiol, who'd learned sarcasm along with humility. "Mama, it's almost ready!" Luli bounced into the kitchen, Jeanne trailing behind her, both kids flushed from playing in the backyard. At 8 and 9, they were inseparable, siblings in all but blood. "Set the table, you two." Zara smiled, her heart full in a way she'd never imagined possible. Young Chol appeared in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy from helping the kids with their fort. No tailored suits anymore, no armed guards, just a man who'd traded an empire for a family. His testimony had dismantled 3 crime syndicates. Immunity had cost him everything. His wealth redistributed to victims, his properties seized, his name dragged through headlines that called him both monster and martyr. He'd paid every debt he could. And he'd walked away clean for Jean. Now he ran a small consulting firm. Legitimate, boring, safe. Zara headed the design department at a mid-tier hotel chain. They drove used cars, shopped at discount stores, counted pennies sometimes, and they'd never been happier. "Need help?" young Chil asked, sliding behind Zara at the stove, his arms wrapping around her waist. "I've got it." She leaned back against his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat, the bullet scar on his shoulder pressed against her back, a permanent reminder of the night everything changed. "I love you," he murmured into her hair. "I know." She turned in his arms, kissing him softly. "And I love you. The real you. Not the dragon, just young Chil." His smile, genuine, unguarded, still surprised her sometimes. Dinner was chaos and laughter. Jeanne and Luli fought over who got the wishbone. Young Chil told terrible dad jokes. Zara pretended to be embarrassed, but laughed anyway. The table was full of food, love, noise, everything they'd fought for. After the kids ran off to watch a movie, Zara and young Chil sat on the back porch, his arm around her shoulders, watching the sun set over their small yard with its swing set and vegetable garden. "Do you miss it?" Zara asked quietly. "The power? The empire?" Young Chol looked at the house, the light glowing warm through windows, the sound of children laughing inside, the woman beside him who'd given him permission to be human. "We have enough," he said, his voice certain. Zara smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "We have everything." And as the first stars appeared above their imperfect, beautiful, ordinary life, the dragon of soul, now just a father, a partner, a man learning to live without shadows, held his family close, and finally felt free.